The honourable member for Toronto-Danforth.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm pleased to rise to speak in support of this bill, although I would say critical support, because I think in many respects it is inconsistent, as some of my colleagues have already indicated, in terms of what benefits are covered for what people. I'll speak to that concern a little bit myself, but I did want to first acknowledge some of the very important aspects of this bill that we should celebrate and thank the government indeed for moving on. Currently, it's the case that employment insurance claimants can access sickness benefits and subsequently access parental benefits. However, at the moment, those same claimants cannot access sickness benefits during or right after a claim for parental benefits because of a technical problem with how the law works. And C-44 would amend this, and this is extremely welcome, and I thank the Minister for moving on that. I would also note that the Canadian Labour Code changes that protect the jobs of people who have taken time off work because a child has gone missing or a child, worse, has been murdered as a result of a criminal code offense or what is suspected to be a criminal code offense. That too has to be welcome. We can all understand the deep trauma, the debilitating effects on parents when a child is lost in that way. And so making sure that they're not penalized in the workplace is very humane, and indeed the fact that it's only 2012 and this is coming into effect only now suggests that many elements of good sense do take, unfortunately, a bit too long to make their way into our legal system. So I thank the Minister for her earlier speech outlining this change in the law. However, I would like to go on and talk just a little bit about some of the problems. I mentioned when I started speaking inconsistencies in how this is being approached. Some of the inconsistencies stem from a general problem with our employment insurance and our federal benefit system of approaching things in far too ad hoc, piecemeal a fashion. Not looking at the overall picture, not looking at the structural dimensions of unemployment and other related or similar causes for people needing assistance, and instead we are ending up more and more with an employment insurance system that looks a bit like the tax code that we all are so keen to attack for being unprincipled and full of all kinds of piecemeal provisions without any overarching coherence. I think our employment insurance system is approaching that point, and although the benefits in this C-44, this Act, are very much welcome, they add to this piecemeal ad hoc approach. And so let me just give a couple of examples of why we're concerned that something is being moved on, but in a way that's inconsistent, and again speaks to the rather limited ad hoc approach this bill feeds into. So it is great, as I've already mentioned, that the Labour Code creates job protection now, once this bill is passed, for those who are employed. But there's not, and I'm talking obviously about parents who lose their children, a child goes missing or is killed through a criminal offense. So Labour Code creates job protection, and that's great, that should be the case, but there's no good reason to tie the benefit itself, the grant to the parents, to the fact of someone being employed, especially when the funding is coming from general revenue and is not considered an employment insurance benefit. So we do have a problem with the fact that not all the funding for this bill is from the general revenue, but at least this benefit, the benefit to parents who have a missing or murdered child, is coming from general revenue. So there's no technical reason not to be consistent in who receives the benefit. And yet, it is being treated as if it's somehow an employment insurance benefit because it's being linked and limited to those who received $6,500 a year of earned income in the previous year before the benefit. There's no logical reason why parents who lose children in the way this bill is contemplating merit the benefit if they've been employed in the past to a certain threshold level, and those on lower income who are unemployed or otherwise don't qualify by this standard also lose a child in the exact same way. The trauma is no different. The debilitating effects are no different. The undermining of their responsibilities, even if they're not responsibilities in the workplace, are no different. Others have responsibilities in their lives, whether or not they're employed, that will be undermined, indeed made impossible to fulfill, if a child is abducted or worse, murdered. For example, let me just give two examples that I think anybody can recognize as valid ones. You have stay-at-home parents who are not earning a formal income in the workplace. They are working. In this day and age, we all recognize the fact that this is work. I think many of us would hope that the system would eventually evolve to the point that this work is recognized as a form of employment. At the moment, that's not the case. So you have stay-at-home parents who have other children, for example, that they're taking care of, or an elderly parent, or they're just trying to hold things together in the house, and they lose a child in exactly the same circumstances as somebody who is employed or had been employed to the $6,500 rate. And the second example, Mr. Speaker, is an unemployed parent who has to spend, according to our system and according to our cultural values, has to spend a lot of time looking for work. That's exactly what we expect somebody to be doing. That will be undermined by exactly the same event in their life as somebody who's employed. Their ability to work, somebody who's employed will be affected by losing a child. The ability to actually put yourself back into the workplace, the job market, will also be affected. So that inconsistency, I think, is something that I'd love to see looked at in committee, especially, again, because this is being funded from general revenue. Mr. Speaker, I neglected to ask at the beginning for permission to split my time. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to split my time, if possible, with the member for Pontiac. Thank you. Another example is of this inconsistency problem. Why precisely is the benefit to parents who lose a child limited to parents whose children are missing or killed only as a result of a suspected breach of the criminal code? Okay? So the question there is there something quite arbitrary in drawing the line there, even as we all have no problem in understanding the debilitating effects of crime? And there is indeed something hardwired in all human beings to perhaps react a bit worse when a crime has befallen our family. It's not just the loss of the child, it's how the child has been lost. I accept there is a distinction, yet you can have as much trauma and debilitating effects when children go missing or are killed in other ways. Now let me draw on the very good speech of my colleague, the Honourable Member from Hamilton Mountain, who in her reply speech to the Minister's introduction of the bill had the following to say, and I'm going to quote because I think it was put so well I can't put it any better, Mr. Speaker. Quote, "If I'm understanding this right, if a family were to go wilderness camping, say, and their toddler wandered away from the campsite," thank you, Mr. Speaker, and ended up missing, the parents would not be eligible for any support during their time of frantically searching for their child. Why is that? Do the government's need to feed the rhetoric of its law and order agenda take precedence over good public policy here? I'm simply not understanding why the criminal code caveat was deemed necessary to add in the bill," unquote. And I can only echo this concern, Mr. Speaker. It's not adequate to say, as the Minister said in the House yesterday, that it was judged to be a good public policy because of response to consultations with Canadians. Surely Canadians, upon reflection, would not begrudge extending the benefit to analogous circumstances. Are Canadians themselves so fixated on a crime agenda that they would not see the inconsistency. Mr. Speaker, I very much doubt it. I'll end right there, Mr. Speaker, because I would very much like to hear what my colleague from Pontiac has to say after I take a few questions. Thank you.
Question.